We've got some special seats for you. Yeah. Thank you guys. That's right.
We're not starting yet.
Yeah. Dr. Nightingale.
Anyway. So take the light ready a little. You just do it. Yeah. Stop.
There's a few presentations.
Hello everyone, we'll get started. Thank you very much for coming tonight to hear our new event, Breaking the Mould, learning the lessons from women in surgery. I can see people from all year groups and a couple of interns here as well, so it's very nice to see you here as well. I would like to introduce Danny. Danielle Taylor is our rural site rep and has come all the way from Ballarat just to put on this event for you guys. So it's a brilliant effort from her and her team. And we've got some fabulous surgeons here tonight, Australia's finest, and they all just happen to be women. So we're very privileged to host these lovely ladies and doctors here tonight. So without further ado, I'll introduce Danny, who will get us started for this evening. Please make her very welcome.
So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which we meet together today. Pay my respects to the elders past and present. Okay, so as Jamie said, we're very proud to be hosting this event tonight as it represents something that we strongly believe in as a society. We discussed this evening earlier in the year. We all decided that we really wanted to use this evening to discuss the barriers and the stereotypes related to surgery. By medical students and junior doctors, our role in this discussion is not to be underestimated. So early in my clinical placement, I was told that being a female doctor, respect would be difficult for me to gain. And that the only way that I'd be able to gain it is to become a professional bitch and one of the boys. I was really taken aback and spoke to my friends, but speaking to my friends, both male and female, surgical and medical, I learned that this was not an uncommon experience. We want to disprove some of these ideas, as well as discuss the challenges that exist today in surgery and continue to combat them. The surgeons that we have here tonight have been selected because they, in some way or another, break these stereotypes. You'll leave tonight feeling inspired to face the challenges in your career. But before we get into the talks, there are a few people I'd like to thank. To the SSSM exec for helping make tonight a reality, especially Shreya and Ben who have guided me through it. Thank you to Prof Kate Drummond for being the motivating force behind tonight. And importantly, our goals and MIPS. So I'd like to introduce Margaret up to say a few more words to MIPS.
And I must congratulate you on organising such a great evening. I feel very standing up here with such an esteemed panel of women here this evening. So hopefully most of you know who MIPS are by now. You are either joined in, got one of our drink bottles or one of our pens, and hopefully the pens have helped you pass a few exams. Will be known as more than just presenter of collateral. So more importantly, we're here to support you, and supporting you is by starting off with student societies such as the Surgical Society, and hopefully through the rest of your career as well. Most importantly, we have a 24/7 hotline that you can ring at times when you need some advice, and we actually have doctors at the end of our 24/7 line when you do call. We think that's one of the best benefits that we have. And we also have very a lot of educational sessions as well. So actually tonight we're holding a webinar that's free to our members and actually anyone that wants to join in. So if you're interested in joining in that instead of rushing home to watch The Bachelor, please log on. It's it's a doctor who is, I don't know if you've heard of him, Dr Toogood, who's in charge of the Crazy Socks campaign. So he's become a bit of a champion of wellbeing and health and looking after yourself. So he's got a wealth of information to share tonight. I'll be here till the end, so if you've got any questions, please come and see me. Those of you that are final years, congratulations, you're at the downhill slope, or uphill slope actually, it's not really downhill. And congratulations on getting your jobs for next year. If you would like to come and see me and join as an intern for next year, I'll bet you back to the room. But that's it, otherwise enjoy the evening, and thank you for letting me speak. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Margaret. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Clare up to speak, Dr. Clare Iseli. Did you really have just know? That worked? Excellent. Show you the front of the surgical news this month, which my wonderful registrar has been brought along. See that it's obviously a female trainee coming along to do some of her endoscopic training with her baby in a pumpy. And I can tell you this was me. So when I was on my maternity leave and I was working part-time, I just brought my baby along. And of course I didn't take her into the operating room, him into the operating room, but I found people very accepting of that. He was challenging baby, the second one. See that. So I guess I was interested as to why I might be chosen to speak tonight, and I guess I probably do represent some differences in different types of surgeons that might be approached. And one of the things is, as you can see, I'm not a very aggressive person, and I guess I did represent the fact that that doesn't stop you being successful in surgery. I canvassed all of my female ENT surgeons in particular. We have a group called the Gents, Girls of ENT, and we meet regularly. I asked them, what key messages would you like when you were a medical student, when you were thinking about surgical training? So I guess the most obvious one, can women be surgeons? Of course the answer is yes, and you've got an amazing panel of people to represent that today. So in 2010, when the first survey was done, we represented about 8.5% of all surgeons. I'm sure that that's more. When I first started my ENT training, there were 6 female ENT surgeons in Victoria. There's now 22. That's a big work once these two next year. So it's obviously changing. Do I feel different as a female surgeon? I've got to be honest, no. Amanda and I were talking about 5 years ago, someone said, can you please come and talk about being a woman in surgery? I would say, oh no thanks, I don't want to be a woman in surgery, I want to be a surgeon. I just want to be a good surgeon who works hard, and I don't think my gender should have anything to do with that. Surprisingly, in the last few years, I've changed that rhetoric. I'm actually really proud to be a female surgeon. I actually think I bring something different. Surgeons and all of the different diverse range of surgeons that we have all bring something different to the surgical team, and that's valuable. I might not be as good at making decisive decisions, but I'm a reasonable communicator and I'm good at working with teams, and I guess sometimes I'm more approachable. So they are values that I've had to be honest with myself about, and that once you can recognise your strengths, you can also utilise them. So I'd encourage you to be proud of the unique things that you bring to a surgical team and recognise that they're valuable. I ever felt that being a woman in surgery was a problem. I certainly felt like in my first couple of years, when I started on the job, I had to be better than the boys to be equal to the boys. But I think that might have been my perspective. General surgery and ENT, I've never felt that one once. And you'll see that I think I've achieved everything I was hoping to achieve. What about ENT? Are ENT good for women, or is there a role for women in ENT? I certainly love ENT. I was certain my entire medical school life that I'd be a general surgeon. My father's a general surgeon. I used to do ward rounds with him when I was 5 years old. I used to watch laparoscopic videos when I was such a nerd. Halfway through my first advanced year of general surgery training, I was really interested in the head neck component, and people said the future of head neck is in ENT in Victoria, so I moved over. And surprisingly, I actually diverted my plan into ENT certainly has an extraordinary range of cases. They are microscopic, endoscopic, and open cases. An extraordinary range of paediatric and adult surgery, which suits me. I have children, and I like children, and I like relating to them. It's also a unique mix of both medical decision making and surgery. And I think that the interesting thing is there's something that females can do well, multitasking, thinking of different things, thinking of different potentially. Of course, our colleagues can also do. The unique thing that I liked about ENT, as well as all the other attributes, is that the emergency ENTs are all or nothing. The person's dying, or they can be dealt with tomorrow. So that and there's nothing in between. There's either an airway emergency, and it's worth getting out of bed for an airway emergency, or you sleep all night. And that's very compatible with having children who don't sleep all night. At least it's only one thing waking them up. The other unique thing about ENT for me, as compared to some of my time in general surgery, I'm very keen to hear Amanda's opinion about it, is that a lot of the hardest cases in ENT are in hours. So for general surgery and many other specialties, there are so many complicated things that happen in hours, but there's also a lot of really heavy surgery that happens after the laparotomy in the middle of the night, the bleeding aneurysm that you just have to deal with. And, in ENT, our most complicated cases happen usually in hours. And that is quite compatible with a balanced life, and that's not to underplay the fact that training wasn't hard. But for me, that was a major bonus that I wasn't looking for, but stumbled across in ENT. I also found the culture in ENT in Victoria is very good. I'd be interested to hear what you're doing with the other accounts, but never once was my gender brought up. Never once did I feel that it was present in the room in ENT, and that was fantastic. So what have I managed to achieve? And this is not a big note, it's just to show you that whatever you want to do, you can do. So I'm an otologist, neurotologist, the kind of ear surgeon who also works on skull base with Kate's team at the Royal Melbourne. So I was the first female, Australian female, to do a North American skull base fellowship. So there was another female surgeon, Cheryl Wexler, who's amazing, who did one in the UK, the first one to go to the US, and hopefully one of these two will follow me. And I work at the idea as part of the cochlear implant team, the general otology team. I also am involved in some research there, including first human trials of implantable devices and neurotrophic factors to regrow hair cells. I work at the Royal Melbourne Hospital with Kate's team, taking skull-based tumours off the brainstem. And I'm a visiting neurotologist, I'm actually called a neurosurgeon, which I pretend is real, at the Austin. And I am a lecturer at Melbourne University. I also oversee the audiology service reports there, and I do some multidisciplinary research with neurologists. And I run private practice in all the other bits, all the other minutes that I have in each day. So who else am I? Well, I'm a mum of 2 monkeys that wake me up in the middle of the night, and I'm certainly here to testify that that's possible with surgery. I don't want to underplay how challenging that was. I've got to be honest that mum and dad are not the same in the middle of the night, particularly for young children, and that can be difficult. I know juggling children and full-time work is going to be difficult for any parent, but for the mum, there are some unique challenges. It certainly does compromise my time with them, and I've got to be honest with you. I also played a lot of soccer. I've travelled as often as I can. And sometimes I make bad decisions on nights out. I'd like to show you that surgeons aren't all about work. I certainly work as hard as anybody, and I love my work and I'm passionate about it. And I go home and I like to be diverse and I like to bring other aspects of my personality into my life. And
How did I achieve it? I had lots of help. I'm a little bit sad that my major mentors are all female, but I think that's, if I'd known Kate earlier, I'm sure she'd be up there too. So these people supported me, opened doors for me, answered my questions. My brother carried my private practice when I was on maternity leave. Rob Riggs, who's in the middle there, finished my skull-based cases for me so I could go home and breastfeed my children. You know, people asked, people helped because I asked for it. You know, so just because things have been done a certain way in the past doesn't mean they have to be done like that every single time. I wanted to do things differently. I didn't want to lose my academic positions in any way, shape or form, but I wanted to have babies and I wanted to breastfeed them. So I just did it, but I did it with lots and lots of help. I also had an amazing group of gents that support me, and I found it really helpful to have mentors who I could see myself in. You know, I think that, like Danielle mentioned, I guess the classic surgeon is aggressive, you know, is single-minded about the work, doesn't have any other priorities, and that's just not true for lots and lots of surgeons. But it really helped me to find people who I could see myself in. People who were juggling different priorities, who valued other things as well as surgery, but were really genuinely dedicated to themselves as academic surgeons. So it was great to find a really strong group of girls who do that. So we meet three times a month. I also have not just a village, but an entire country of people that help me, and you know, that's what's makes it possible that everyone feels their way. I'm really lucky to have an extremely supportive husband. And if I could give one message to the people who are considering doing surgery and having children, it's to have a conversation early. In fact, that's what you want to do, and you're going to need help to get there. So we had a conversation literally 2 hours after we got engaged. I'm extremely romantic, I know. I really wanted to be a surgeon. And if we did want to have children, that couldn't be compromised. And he has been wonderful. He works part-time. He's basically the full-time carer for our children, and you know, that works for us. There are lots of other models that work for family and the way it works for person. So what are my key points for anyone wanting to be a surgeon, not just a female surgeon? But be realistic. It is hard. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. It will take your emotional and physical energy. Man, it's rewarding. I wouldn't take it back for a minute. All those sleepless nights, helping people in emergency, I wouldn't give any of that back for a second. But it does take away from you, and you have to be willing to give that. The more you put in, the more you get out. Every single time you see a patient in emergency, every single time you go to another case, you're learning something. It might be what not to do, but most of the time it's adding to you in a positive way. Plan ahead for things that are priorities. Unfortunately, what's not compatible with a surgical life is just randomly moving through, hoping things will work out. It really helps plan, make decisions, and prioritise things that are important to you. It's certainly compatible to have babies with surgical training. I'm a living testament to that, but you need to make it a priority. Be honest with the support team, as I said. For us, it's been extremely smooth, easy and enjoyable, but we had to have a conversation first. I've had other female surgeons who've struggled with balancing children because they haven't had that conversation. So I encourage you. Surgical training ends, and life afterwards is quite different. It doesn't mean it's not busy, demanding, but it's also a little bit more in control. And certainly, you know, one thing that's been talked about a lot by the College of Surgeons is the idea of part-time training. So certainly part-time work is compatible with ANT. As I mentioned before, if you're doing 3 major academic days, you would be respected just as much as someone working full-time 5 days. It's just the idea that in training, it's quite a challenge to do that and still get your surgical caseload. So we don't currently have any part-time training positions in ENT, but the College of Surgeons and Liaisons College are extremely supportive of it. So I think it's realistic that that might happen in the future. Just a reminder of that.
We'll have time for questions at the end. If anyone has any questions now. Okay, I'd like to invite Dr. Amanda Robertson.
Here it is. Right, so thanks again very much for inviting me to come and talk as well. I'm head of nephrology surgery at Royal Melbourne, and what I'm hoping to do today is try and get rid of some of the myths, I think, regarding surgical training and being a surgeon. Because I think it's a great job, and I think for most of us, it's not discrimination, it's not men versus women, it's just basically getting on with doing the job and working hard. I'm a renal transplant surgeon at Royal Melbourne. I also have a small private practice which I do at Melbourne Private, so I keep it all co-located, and my rooms are there as well. I was a medical student at the University of Melbourne and at Royal Melbourne. And I was then an intern, a resident, and then a registrant on here, so I stuck around. We do extended rotations as a general surgical training, so we do a lot of country rotations, and that was really great fun. I almost became a country surgeon after doing all of those, because I really enjoyed those. I did my fellowship in general surgery with oncology surgeons, and then I went to England for 3 years. I did a year in London as a surgeon doing hepatobiliary and then liver transplantation, and then I went to Oxford for 2 years and did renal transplantation and vascular. That's where I sort of really took on the role of doing renal transplantation, and that really grew from there. I took a job back in Royal Melbourne, which was a little bit up and down there for a little while with political moves, but I did get the job back. And that was back as a general and as a renal transplant surgeon. In Melbourne, I then didn't have a huge amount of work at Royal Melbourne at that stage. They were not offering much in the way of remuneration. So I went to Monash and worked out there for a while as a transplant surgeon. After I left there because I found the distances too great to try and cover, I then worked at the Austin for a while and also did some paediatric renal transplantation for children. So I worked at a few of the hospitals around Melbourne as well as a consultant. Fantastic job. We do exciting stuff like this. This is Tim Furlong on the front page of the Herald Sun a few years ago. A paired kidney exchange that involved 6 pairs of donors recipients with an Australia-wide sort of program that we now run. And that's been up and running since 2010. And it enables a lot of people who can't really get transplanted to swap their donors and recipients around so they can get a successful transplant. So transplantation is fun. It's good surgery. It's quite neat surgery. It only takes a few hours to do, which is all my concentration span is. And you get great results, and you get a really successful outcome in the vast majority of cases. And then you also get a great team working together. So that's the team from Royal Melbourne who put together that 6-way transplant and a couple of patients in the foreground. So it is a major team thing. I think part of surgery and part of medicine really is working as a team player. And that's a really important part of life. And we also get some great results from kidney transplantation, which makes our job really lovely. They're easy patients to deal with. The results are great. So teamwork, teams are really important. It's really, really important that you are a good team player and being part of a team. At Royal Melbourne, we've got 5 renal transplant surgeons. My senior is my mentor. He's my mentor from when I was a very junior surgical trainee, and he still is. He's the go-to person if I've got problems and I can't work someone out, or if I need help in theatre. Nancy Sue trained with us in general surgery and then went away to do her transplant fellowship, and then came back to us. Trained in general surgery with us, and then became our first transplant fellow. And at the moment we've got Emma Tully, who's our transplant fellow, and she'll hopefully stay on with us as well. So team, we work well together, we trust each other, and it makes it a really good unit. And
last week, when our interns swapped over, sent me a lovely email saying how much he enjoyed working with our team, because the team worked together and the team wanted to be together. We like chatting together, we like going out together, and we work very well as a team. So he, amongst others, has commented on that in the past, and I think, again, it probably helps people get into the area and get into surgery, or maybe even into transplant surgery. General surgery at Royal Melbourne is quite strong with women, and it's across a variety of specialties. It's a big unit, and with time, it won't be long, I think, until it's about equal balance between men and women. And talking to a friend recently at a meeting, he was saying he reckons women are going to take over surgery before too much longer, because he reckons, and he's quite an astute sort of guy, I think, he reckons we're better suited to it. Technically and probably mind-wise. So it was an interesting sort of concept. And I think, as Claire's already mentioned, I think if you want to achieve something, you really just have to put your mind to it. And I think anyone who gets through medical school can do whatever they want in their career. You've passed a certain standard by getting into medical school. So once you're there, it's really then up to you that you want to put into studying, whether you want to do postgraduate studies, how far you want to go with those. But you have the background and the intelligence to do whatever you want to do. So I think it's really important to keep remembering that. And even if you get some challenges along the way, you just need to work through those challenges and just boulder on if you want to do it. The advantage of being a surgeon is that you get to do good jobs like this one. A few years ago, there was a devastating earthquake in Safarabad in Pakistan, and the team of us went there to try and do some work for them a few months after the earthquake. And I took a couple of my friends who were scrub nurses with us, and the anaesthetist right there at Tata came from Darwin. And we had an amazing couple of weeks in Safarabad, which had been badly devastated by the earthquake. The girls were still shopping despite the devastation that was next to in that shop. And it's amazing, you know, you get used to a certain standard in where you work, and then you go to a place like this where the fly swap is just sort of draped across a completely disorganised box of equipment that's about to be used. So it is amazing the sort of things you see. But you see groups of kids like this who are just fantastic to talk to and see where they're living. This was outside with patients just sort of milling around waiting to be seen and operated on. The local butcher shop just down the road. Horrible cases like this poor child who'd fallen into a fire while his mum was cooking. He had about 50% burns and almost certainly didn't survive after we left South Africa. But tragic sort of stuff like that makes you just appreciate what you've got at home and how good life is. And I think it's really important to put stuff in perspective the whole time, realising that although you might have had a pretty shitty day, it's probably nothing compared to anyone like that. And we met the High Commissioner to Pakistan and Afghanistan, who was on the right there. She was an amazing woman who had lived there for quite a few years and just coped with all the politics incredibly well. Another trip we did with a slightly similar team, some of the team overlapped, was a College of Surgeons trip to West Timor that we did a few years ago. The intensive care units there on the right side, I see. And this team photographed here, I took one of my paediatric surgical colleagues, Liz McLeod, and a couple of our scrub nurses and a couple of our anaesthetists. And we had a fantastic time. Again, we're still really good friends. We catch up every few months, and it's just, it points out to you how important it is to be part of a team and to see how other people live, how other people perform their work. And staff at the hospital, beautifully attired and really keen. This guy had a catheter in, he was draining green urine. I stood on the right, he was draining green urine, he was. And that was their sort of their intensive care unit for their neonates. So pretty basic stuff. I've been lucky in my career. I've also been the examiner in general surgery for the College of Surgeons. And we're in the front row there, there's Mary Pitcher, who had predated me in that role. Wendy Brown, to her on her side, is now the senior examiner in general surgery. And when we examine in pairs, and Maren and I were put together as a pair of examiners for one exam, which some of the boys found a bit confronting to have two girls together, until we reminded them that they were two boys together examining, and then they sort of saw the logic that it wasn't actually such a big problem. So women are getting into everything. I think there really are very, very few barriers left. Really important, as Claire's already said, to get things in perspective, to remember that you haven't got renal failure, you haven't got cancer, and hopefully, and we also get together. We also get together with groups. This is our GNO, Girls Night Out. Andrew Bendrup, some of you might recognise from the clinical school. Alison Ann Curtis, who's a rheumatologist at the Melbourne and also at the Women's. Jenny Collin, another endocrinologist. Sue Hiscock, who's a obstetrician at Women's. And Jeanette Falcone, who's an anaesthetist at the Women's as well. So really good getting together with people like that who can tell you great stories about their week. And also remember to get away and have time out and away from work and away from all the challenges. Go down to the beach and run on the beach for them. That's really important. I'm also a mum, and I decided I was hopeless. I probably threw myself into my career a bit too hard, and forgot to get a partner in my life. I looked and looked, but I missed out. So I decided to have kids on my own, and so I went off and managed to do that. And so I've got these two munchkins who are probably just as bad as Claire's. They fortunately sleep through the night, so I can go out at night and operate, and it's not such a big deal. And a fair bit of my work is overnight, but you work around it. You use people. I've got nannies. I've got my sister. My mum and dad live around the corner, and I think it's really important to utilise as many people as you can. Keep people on side. Invite people over at the weekend when you know you're on call, you're about to get called in. Really important to use and abuse everyone. But enjoy life. You've got to get on and enjoy life. And surgery is very much compatible with life. And don't be put off by people. I think the whole bullying thing, I don't actually believe in particularly. I don't think I was ever bullied. And I think the guys I've worked with and the women I've worked with on the whole have just been fantastic and encouraging and good people to be with. So yeah, enjoy, and good luck to all of you.
Do we have any questions now? Right, thank you. I'll invite our next speaker, Dr Ruth Mitchell, up.
Hi there, it's absolutely wonderful to be here. I'm Ruth Mitchell. I'm the only person up here who is not. So I'd like to thank Amanda Robertson for giving me palpitations when she talked about the fellowship exam, because that's the major obstacle that is in my future, one of the many, many obstacles. And also, Kate Drummond is the senior examiner for neurosurgery, so I'll be, so look, there's a lot to worry about. There's a lot of stress in my future. It's a great thing, everyone should do surgery. And I was about to say, so I'm a neurosurgery registrar. I took time out, fourth year of a 6-year training program to complete a PhD. And so I'm in the middle of being a PhD student. So people say, so you must have been a hard day at work. Well, I've had the most interesting day. So today started out with a trip down to Monash University, where I spent time on a microscope which costs a couple of $1 million, which does electron microscopy. An example which I had stained with uranium last week, of a receptor called the epidermal growth factor receptor, and I looked at that at 42,000 times magnification. And it was really cool. And unlike Monday, when I went the track down there, the microscope was working, so that was a bonus. That was nice. And I think that it's interesting to think, well, what was your day like today? Mine was amazing because I made a choice, you know, about 3.5 years ago that I was going to do this PhD. And I was going to do something that was really scary to me. And it had that sort of, you know, taking that step forward has really been rewarded, I think, in getting to learn how to do all kinds of new things and think all kinds of new ways and learn all sorts of new skills and be inspired by people that I really have been so enriched by. And I think that's the way I feel about surgery as well. You know, it's a really frightening thing to step into, but I'm super glad I've done it. And so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what my experiences have been like as a surgical trainee, as a woman in surgery. I discovered surgery as a medical student. I mean, when I started med school, I thought I'd probably be a pediatrician. Maybe I'd do emergency medicine. But in the back of my mind, there was this idea that surgery seemed cool, but I didn't really know what happened there. When I was growing up. So I was quite enamored with Hawkeye, and I, you know, thought he was very funny, and I like the fact that he was always going on about how war was pointless, because I think that too. To be humorous in the middle of a disaster, and he was distilling his own moonshine, which I also admired. So there's a lot to like about Hawkeye. And as I discovered the things I liked about surgery, cool, I'm going to be like that. That's awesome. And so I remember being in the operating theatre in my last year of med school and seeing the brain and looking at the posterior fossa, and there was the cerebellum and this beautiful cerebellar folia, and I was like, they should have sent a poet. It was just, you know, completely, I had tears in my eyes. It was ridiculous. So I got a bit melodramatic, but carried away. But so then I decided on the strength of that very spiritual experience to make an appointment with the head of that department, Mr. Nick Rodos at the Flinders Medical Centre, who I was a med student. And I was like, Mr. Rodos, I just wonder if I could have a meeting with you. He's like, sure. So we had this meeting, and I said, so Mr. Rodos, I want your job. Excellent, that's fantastic. He's a little taken aback, but he coped pretty well with the whole situation and gave me some sensible advice. So I proceeded with that, and it really, you know, when I realized, hey, I want to be a neurosurgeon, it was like realizing you could be an astronaut. You know, like finding out I could go to the moon. And when you're almost finished med school, you realize you've done the first step already. Like now you just have to get into into neurosurgery training. And so I kind of thought about that every day for about 4 years until I actually got in. And somewhere along the way, I realized that the first probably decade of being a neurosurgical wannabe wasn't going to be like being Hawkeye. It's more like being radar. Running around and you're like, yes, sir, just sign this, sir. You know, can you please just sign this, sir? No, don't worry about what it is, just sign. Yes, sir. And you're kind of just trying to make the world work, and you're kind of getting everyone's pens and notes, and you're trying to find the drug chart, and you're not saving anybody's life. But that does come later. I found challenging as I've gone through this really exciting journey, which I've loved, that people do make assumptions. People make assumptions about me, and people made assumptions about what surgery would mean for me. And the thing I've learned from that is that you have to be very, very careful who you let speak into your life. And you have to choose your mentors wisely. So everyone's got an opinion, and not all of them are going to be helpful for you. Now, some of these people are your seniors, they're your registrar, your consultant, someone who runs your medical course. And so they might say something that you're like, it doesn't really sound right to me, but you don't get to say that back to them. So you just have to smile and go, But in your head, you have to say to yourself, this does not pass the common sense test. This doesn't resonate with me. And I think part of discerning your journey in medicine is about finding what is it that resonates with me? What's the path that's going to work for me? And it's going to be different for everyone. And an important part of that is actually finding out who you are and what you bring to it. And so as a registrar, after I'd gotten onto training, probably about second year, I realized that the main negative feedback that people had for me was, look, you're fine, you're good on call, and we know we can trust you, and you're working really hard, your anatomy's all right, but you talk too much. And I was like, okay, hang on a minute, sorry, I was trying to get some constructive feedback about my performance as a surgeon. Like, that's all you have? And that was all they had. And I was like, wait a minute. And I was like a little offended. And then everyone told me, oh, no, it's great. If that's all they can say negative about you, that's great. I was like, well, it doesn't feel great, to be honest. And what that helped me to understand is that, you know, sometimes the way you are won't be perceived the way you want it to be. And you just have to make your peace with that. Now, someone who's going to be quiet all the time is because someone thinks that's what's appropriate because they happen to be, you know, a reserved, introverted person. But I do understand that maybe if they're doing an operation and I'm assisting, I might need to just shut up, you know. And also you realize that at the scrub sink where you really want to have a chat about the operation because you're so excited, you know, that might be their like quiet time. That might be their get their crap together, you know, kind of moment. So you might just have to be quiet then. And so finding that balance between being true to who you are and being yourself and also working with the team and taking feedback on board, that's really not easy. It's not straightforward. So some of the challenges are external. They're the things that other people say to you, the things I certainly had all sorts of awful sexist things said to me. I had a number of people ask me who I slept with when I got into training to get onto training. I can assure you I would not have had time to do that. So that's another thing. So, you know, there are things like that that certainly do occur and have occurred. But probably the biggest challenge is the internal one. And what I'm talking about is something called imposter syndrome. And so there's this thing that goes on in your mind where you say to yourself, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve to be here. It's a total fluke. It's a complete accident of fate that I'm standing here in front of you lot. And I'm talking about the fact that I'm training as a neurosurgeon, I'm getting to do a PhD in a really cool area, and I've got access to cool microscopes, and I'm having a great time, and they gave me a scholarship. Like, it's a fluke, it's a fluke. Like, but it's not, you see. And so the battle with that voice inside of you that says you're not worthy, you don't deserve to be there, you shouldn't be doing this, someone else should have got that job, that's a constant struggle. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and to name it, because then we can kind of realize, I mean, certainly once you start talking about it, people go, oh, I thought I was the only one. And you're not at all. We all struggle with that. It's a feature of being a high-performing person who's self-critical. And letting go of some of that, you know, unrelenting high-standard stuff and just being mean to yourself is also part of the journey. So I wanted to talk about some of the good things I've gotten to do recently, which aren't operating or experiments. And part of that has been about finding my voice in medicine and in surgery. And so some of you know I'm the chair of the Trainee Association for the College of Surgeons, RACSTA. And that's been a wonderful opportunity for me to meet other trainee leaders, like Fiona, who was on the RACSTA board with me for a time as the ENT representative, and others who have just been so inspiring, who are trying to make training better, and in fact, surgery better for patients as well. And that's helped me to have opportunities to do public speaking and writing as well. And so I've written a couple of articles for MJ Insight, things in surgical news. I thought I was going to get in big trouble with the last one. I wrote about the challenge of the underperforming supervisor, because everyone's always talking about the underperforming trainee. And I had a couple of friends just crack it at me going, when's someone going to talk about how supervisors can be crap too? And I was like, I'll write that, take one for the team. And so far, you should read the comment section. Like, seriously, don't read my article, read the comment section. There's some angry people called anonymous. I was like, oh, we found a troll. Yes, I'm sure you're a fabulous doctor, but you're so brave. Don't you think? Anyway, never mind. And I found my voice a bit on social media as well. Now, social media is a double-edged sword. Like, on one hand, it's a really great, empowering thing. It's a wonderful place to have contact with people who come from different backgrounds, finding out about the diversity of people in surgery, and particularly women in surgery. It's been really cool to connect with things like the surgeon, and there's a new account on Instagram at Dr. Doc. If you haven't seen that, you should. There's some great profiles there. But the thing is that, you know, it can waste your time too, so you have to be careful. You have to be careful. Sometimes you're meant to be writing your thesis. That's a thing. Yes. Yes. Kate might be on my committee. So I'll be going to write later, as I'm sure you're aware. But I just want to tell you one story about something that happened on social media, which kind of prodded me on to do something. So I've kind of struggled a bit with the idea of being like the public face of training or women in surgery and stuff, because I don't really think I'm that photogenic, and I'm not that in love with the idea of myself on the cover of things. But I did end up on the cover of the Event magazine because of a thing that happened on Twitter, where a medical student who I've not met in person said, I've been in medical school 3.5 years and I've never met a female surgeon, and I'm so depressed about that. And I was like, I'm devastated to hear that. Like, that shouldn't be happening in 2017 in Australia. It's ridiculous. And then she said, at least I have, at Dr Ruth Mitchell on here to inspire me. And I was like, and then I was like, fine, I'll do the cover. Because it made me realize that, like, it's not about me and what I'm necessarily all that super happy or comfortable with. It's about the fact that when I was a medical student, I certainly needed there to be people who looked like me, who were up there doing the things that I thought were impossible for me. And I think that understanding that I need to be the person I needed when I was younger is a big part of my job at this stage. So I hope that what I've had to share with you has been helpful. I have a couple of just quick tips to finish with. One is to look after yourself. And I think that starts with having a GP. And I feel really passionate about this because you don't know what's going to happen in your life. And having a GP is a good opening to a whole bunch of other things that you might need access to, whether it's mental health care, whether it's getting a good dietitian, whether it's seeing some other kind of specialist. That stuff's really important. And I've had to access all kinds of things in the last 12 months, and I'm really grateful. So get a GP. The next thing I would say, I've mentioned it before, but really to emphasize, you want to find good mentors, find good role models to speak into your life. Be choosy, be specific, and you need more than one. They might not all be women, they might not all be surgeons. I have a couple of barristers that I catch up with because they've got really good advice about being a woman in a difficult space and about achieving hard things in difficult places. I would say that you want to be wearing TEDs when you're in the hospital, by the way. So, like, especially if you're on call, like if you're catching up with a surgeon and going on call with them, like, just wear TEDs. Your legs will thank you. It's amazing. And like, I never said that. And I think the final thing to say is, people worry about whether do you have to be super aggressive to be a surgeon, or like, I don't want to be mean and I don't want to be a pushover though. And I think that the best little quote I've seen about this is, do no harm, but take no shit. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Let's have at the end. Okay, I'd like to invite Dr. Sophie Nightingale up to speak next.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you to all of you for inviting me here today. It's a pretty harder to follow. You may not be a surgeon, but I think you're a great public speaker. So well done. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about my journey. It's different from everyone else's here, but what's hit me so far in all the talks is that everyone is passionate about what they do. I mean, I looked at ENT and, to be honest, like, boring. I didn't do it for me. But clearly it does for Claire, and everyone else here is passionate about what they do, and I think that's so important. So I guess I could become Prime Minister if I hadn't got my permanent residency, and that cost me and my family 10 grand. So I went to Auckland Medical School. I grew up on a farm, and that probably, I don't know, influenced some of my decisions. And then I went and worked. It's a small town or small area in the North Island, and then I went and worked in Christchurch. At this time, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. At med school, I remember my first rotation as a fourth-year student was in general surgery, and I went and watched a lab collie, and I was like, this is awesome. I love this. I don't know how many lab collies I watched that rotation, but heaps. I just loved it. A few months later, I went to orthopedics, and I was like, oh, okay, total knee joint, cool. Yep, halfway through the case, I was bored, and I didn't watch another one. And so I thought it was interesting, because I'd expected that if I liked a general surgical operation, I'd like an orthopedic operation, because it's all surgery, right? But I think you've just got to go with what interests you. So when I was at medical school, I joined the New Zealand Army, and I was in the reserves, and we had a unit at med school, so it was pretty social. Basically, you got paid to go out for the weekend and run around and pretend to shoot people, and I thought that was pretty cool at the time. I joined the medical corps, and so we'd practice on dummies and During this time I did my basic surgical training. That was sort of the old school where we did basic surgical training and then you applied to advanced, and then it went for a period of change and now it's gone back to the old way. So you have to keep up to date with what's happening. And then I went to Afghanistan. I've been doing this general surgical rotation. I was an unaccredited registrar. I was working with an accredited registrar, and there's a general surgeon, this was in Christchurch, and he was a nightmare to work for. So he was just obsessive compulsive. Apparently he used to be quite good from what I heard from the stories from the nurses in the past, but he'd actually been involved with an event when he was a registrar, and so there was a surgeon that basically got done for negligence, and he was on his fellowship in the UK. He got pulled back from Christchurch to testify at all these massive trials, and I think that affected his whole career. And as a result, he was a nightmare to work for. And it used to joke that the wives of the advanced general surgical trainees that worked for him were like out to get him because they made their husbands so stressed. And I started not enjoying general surgery so much. And the opportunity came up to go to Afghanistan. That sounds more fun. I guess I better talk a little bit about my personal life. So by this time I started going out with a guy who was doing general surgical training, and he'd applied and gone on to paediatric surgical training. And on our first time we ever went out, he said he wanted 5 kids, and I said, oh, you need to find yourself a nice nurse. And we were together, and he proposed to me 2 weeks before I went to Afghanistan. He did joke that perhaps I should have proposed as I got on the plane, because then I wouldn't have been able to tell him. So Afghanistan was pretty, I was basically the GP for the troops. I wasn't really doing surgery, but I couldn't really stay out of the operating theatre, so I'd go down to the local operating theatre, which is in Barmia, which is where the big giant orders were. And it was so primitive. The first time I went to the theatre, I nearly fainted because they had like cloth masks, and I'm still wearing my boots and like thick woolen socks, and yeah, there's no disposable gowns, there's no oxygen or anything, so it's basically ketamine with an oxygen concentrator. If we're doing a hernia there, and by this time I'm bringing my own masks from our stuff. But they were certainly fascinating to see what they could deal with in such a environment. And then I came back. So I came back from Afghanistan, got married, moved to Melbourne in the space of 4 weeks. Because my husband was on a paediatric surgical training program, so you have to leave New Zealand to do that. So it was Melbourne or Sydney. We picked Melbourne. And wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do at that stage, because I'd sort of been put off general surgery in Christchurch, and I sort of still wanted to do it. So I thought I'd do a few locums. Then I got pregnant and thought, yeah, I don't really want to do ED locums over winter while I'm pregnant. That didn't seem like a very good idea. So I started doing some research. And that was a bit of an eye-opener. Going back into the lab and having to learn what a pipette and a burette and all those sort of things were. But I now have a Master of Surgery in the molecular biology of the gubernaculum, which does not help me in my day-to-day job. I applied for general surgery, and by this time, my husband was finishing his 2 years in Melbourne, so we were going back to New Zealand, so I applied to the New Zealand training scheme. The first question when I went into my interview, so there was, I think we had 2 different groups where we went in, and the first question I got asked was, so when did you marry Michael? And then he said, the surgeon said, oh, I'm not supposed to ask that. And we proceeded after that. But New Zealand's a pretty small place, and this was a surgeon from Hawke's Bay, and my husband had been his registrar. And I changed my name when we got married, which is somewhat unusual. And Nightingale's obviously not a very common name. So I got on to general surgery. And I had 1 child when I got on. By the time I started training, and I started halfway through the year, so I delayed the start of my training. I had a 3-week-old and an 18-month-old. Probably wouldn't recommend doing that in hindsight. And so I can say I did full time for a year and a half, and then I did some part-time training. And I think, like what was being said before, part-time training is all very well in theory, but I actually found it really difficult from a work point of view, because you're not getting enough concentrated surgical experience. So you might do, I think I was doing a bit of endocrine surgery, so you do a thyroid, but then it might end up being 4 weeks before you saw the same procedure again. So I think it makes it really difficult. The other thing is I had several mothers say to me that your children need you more as you get older. You know, you've got 2 in nappies, you're not getting any sleep at night. You go, really? But these are pretty sensible women, so I thought, oh, well, there's probably something to that. And so then I decided that I wanted to finish my training full time. And actually, you know, childcare nannies are actually great for young children, but once they grow up, it's a bit harder. Then my husband got a job back here. So I had managed to finish my training in New Zealand. I was halfway through set training at 30 weeks pregnant with my daughter, shifted over here, took 6 months off, and I managed to transfer to the Victorian training scheme. And I just, cracked on with full-time training, which was very busy, but I managed to get a great nanny who's still part of our lives and was getting married in Italy next year. She's so I did my part 2 exams with 3 children under 6. Not quite sure why, but I took them all. I took the whole family to Adelaide to sit the exams. And here's one of my examiners. I had all 3 female examiners, but not together. And yeah, so it was pretty crazy, and certainly without my husband's support and the other lady that's actually my mother-in-law, I wouldn't have been able to get through. And then you get onto the part 3, so you think that it's actually really hard. We've still got this to go, but it gets harder in some ways. So I managed to work like part-time for a year, like hardly any work, which was sort of good. But now I've seen the work's increasing. Yeah, it's all too much sometimes. The children who were tiny are now grown up, and they do need me more. It's nice to be able to be there after school, because when I get home at 6:30 and say, oh, so what did you do today? They just go, you know. But if you can be there and just have those spontaneous conversations with them at other times, it's very good. So I guess my challenges is the surgical rotations. Us moving to Melbourne was influenced by the fact that if I stayed in New Zealand, the New Zealand training board said that I was going to have to leave Auckland, even though there's actually nothing in the rules that says that you have to do a rural rotation. And I was never going to work in a rural area because I'd married a paediatric surgeon who was going to work in a main centre. So there's nothing in the rules, but they said Palmerston North is only a 1-hour flight. Some people are prepared to split their families, and for me, I wasn't prepared to do that, and I would have given up surgery before I did that, but I found a way around it. So we shifted here, and I researched the different training schemes and found out that Western was newer. They didn't have as many external rotations, and so as a set 3.5, I wasn't going to have to go any further than Werribee, and so I could live in Melbourne. So I managed to get into that, and I didn't even have to go to Werribee. The long hours, but that's, I think, in any professional job, you're going to have to do that. I think you can have anything, but you can't have everything. I've missed some big portions of my kids' lives. So when my oldest started school, I was never there. I think I maybe went to the playground like twice. But for my second one, by that time I had just finished my fellowship year, and so I actually helped in the classroom for 6 months. So there's pros and cons, but you can't have everything. You can't be a mother and look after your children all the time and do surgery all the time. Like, you can't do that. But you get parts of it. Fatigue, I still think being a mother is harder than being a surgeon in terms of fatigue in the nights. And the changes in training, and you've just got to be aware of the rules that they change. The college changes the rules frequently. If you do part-time training, there's a limit to the number of years that you can have, and those rules change a lot. So as I've said, follow your passion. I think if you don't love it as a student, as an intern, you're not going to like it later on. You're going to get bored, you're going to get sick of it. And check out the specialty firsthand. Being an intern resident on the board, I mean, you're just doing the paperwork. And I'm pretty sure that I speak for all my colleagues here when I say that, you know, none of us would mind if you said, hey, can I hang around with you for a day? You know, when are you next working the weekend or whatever? And see actually what we do in our day-to-day lives. Find a mentor, everyone has said that. I learned something interesting. I'm pretty new to Twitter and things, but someone was talking about the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. A sponsor is someone who will be that mentor but will actually go the extra mile and do things to open the door for you. And so Maren Pitcher, who's already been mentioned here, she's been a great mentor to me. And she gave up half a session at Western and started doing some quality work so that I could have a job when I finished. So she's more than a mentor, she's a sponsor because she's done something extra for me. And I think if you can find those people, then that's fantastic and that will help you a lot. Meet your seniors, know your interests. So I think even if you're a student, fourth year, intern, whatever, say, have quite like surgery, I might be interested in it. It doesn't mean you're saying, oh, I want to be a surgeon and you have to do that, but we see so many students. I work at, you know, 3 public hospitals. Sometimes students come in and out for, you know, half an hour. I'm not going to remember your name, but don't take offence to that. If you come back to me and say, oh, I was with you earlier, would you mind if I hung around and come and watch you do an operation? I'm pretty much always going to say yes. So, you know, come and see us whenever you want. Enjoy it. If you don't enjoy training, you're not going to enjoy things later on. And as you get more senior, even some of those people, encourage your juniors, you know. So if you're a final year student, encourage the more junior people. And I've got people above me, below me, and you want to inspire everyone else and take care of everyone else. You know, certainly suicide has been in the media a lot. And I've had one of my colleagues who suicided this year. A girl that I went to school with who became a doctor has suicided, and I think that we sometimes don't take enough care of ourselves, and it's really important that we do that. So have a GP, but also be kind to everyone. Yeah, that would be my take.
Any questions now? So the really nice thing about tonight is that I haven't been asked to bang on about my usual women in surgery talk, because we've already heard wonderful things about work and passion and overseas work and from the people who are here. But I've been asked to talk about the college's Operating with Respect program. So I'm actually testing out, this is a talk that I gave somewhere else. I was asked to be a visiting professor in Toronto at the University of Toronto. And what they wanted me to talk about, the hospital wanted me to talk about brain stuff. But what the University of Toronto wanted me to talk about was our College of Surgeons journey, because they've had some really terrible things happen there. That actually one of their neurosurgeons chopped his wife up and put her in a suitcase in the ocean. So they've got some, they figured they had some problems with culture there. And true. So I was actually invited to give this talk around what's happened in the college. So it's a bit of a test to see how it works here. So my first sort of disclaimer is basically that I have loved my surgical training. And I love doing what I do. And, you know, really, I didn't find it, I mean, I found it difficult like everyone did. I was dead tired and I worked too hard and all of those things. But surgical training and my subsequent practice has been fantastic. I would not do anything different. Yes, someone said this before, my mentors pretty much have all been men. And so, you know, sort of people always sort of talking about having female role models and all of this, but all of the people in the picture there, right from, you know, really hilarious photos like this one down here. That's me, yes. That, you know, these people who I trained with who are all still friends now, Ian Nicholson, cardiac surgeon, Peter Spatala, neurosurgeon in Newcastle, you know, who I'm still sort of friends with, and other people that you might recognise there. Andrew Kay, obviously my chief mentor, Mark Rosenthal, medical oncologist, people I've worked with overseas, American mentors, you know, basically all been men. And so I haven't had a fraught relationship with being in a male-dominated sort of situation. So that's been good. But how did I get involved in this whole women in surgery thing? This is 1993. This is the beginning of the agenda of the Women in Surgery Committee at the College of Surgeons. 1993, I was invited to be the trainee representative on that committee. You'll notice, so there I am, trainee representative. It's interesting how they used to have these agendas. I'm not quite sure why we had to know that Bruce Barraclough couldn't be there because he has a meeting at Hornsby Hospital, but anyway, it's important to point that out. You know, these were the women on the Women in Surgery Committee, and the rest of the people on the Women in Surgery Committee were men, because basically there weren't enough women to be on the Women in Surgery Committee entirely, as far as I could tell. But I've been on that committee since then, and started as a trainee representative, and I've been in the chair and in various other things since then. Never really left it. In 1993, what were the important issues? Part-time and interrupted training, when in 1993 it was really hard to take the year off to have a baby. Apparently your brain went to mush. Had a baby, it was okay if you went and did a PhD, your brain did not go to mush. But if you went and took a year off and had a baby, your brain did go to mush. And so there was a lot of controversy about taking 6 months off to have a child or a year off, and we wrote the policy for part-time and interrupted training. Now, interrupted training now is very straightforward. It's very easy to break your training for research or babies or any other non-mush producing activity. But, sorry? Well, yes, but not irreparably. It can be prepared. Don't tell the boss that. Part-time training continues to be a fraught issue, something that we sort of look at as flexible training. Back then, the college culture, we didn't call it culture, we called it discrimination, and sexism was big issues, and mentoring and role models. That was what we were sort of looking to deal with in 1993. And there's probably good reasons why we needed to. It's actually hard to get really good figures from the college about numbers of female surgeons, which is there up to 2015, and number of female trainees, because lots of college things, they don't actually like to collect gender. So it's not actually that easy to get these figures. And there's a lot of reports where it's noticeably absent, although that's now changed and we collect that data. But trying to get that data is not that easy. And so to make that graph, I think took me about 12 hours of trawling through college reports and all sorts of strange things. Why do we think we've just got so few surgeons? Well, there's lots of reasons that have been put up over the time I've been on these committees. It's just a pipeline, it'll all just happen. It's a bloody long pipeline since we've had equal numbers of female and male medical students. It's about 1986, I think. So it's a very long pipeline, but that is partly the truth. Male surgeons protecting their turf, I think that's a bit oversimplistic. I don't think that's true. Women just don't want to be surgeons. We just don't want to do anything so tough and non-nurturing. You know, I've heard that one a lot of very benevolent sexism. We're just so good at the nurturing stuff, you know. We're just so good at it. We should be doing like educating and pediatrics because we're really good at that. Yes, good. We're not emotionally or physically suited to do surgery. I think we can just put that to bed right now. We've probably got enough examples of emotionally and physically suited people over here. Family and surgery don't mix. Prove that not true. And yeah, we want to choose more nurturing professions. But I think there's actually there's some more complex things that we need to talk about. Is there a problem at all? Well, there have been lots of surveys looking and proper research looking at why girls don't go into surgery. And there's lots of reasons, but basically it's around your time as medical students that you cross the surgery, no surgery divide. You make a decision about whether you're interested or not, and what colours that. So the things that most colour are the lifestyle associated with surgery, the culture in surgery, the surgical work environment, and women also talk about not having female role models and the male-dominated culture. They're the main things. So sort of what can we do about that? And I think I'm going to talk about two things that we can do about that. One of those is to think about unconscious bias, and the other thing is to look at surgical culture, and that's a little bit where I'll just talk about the operating with respect. So unconscious bias, the way we think about surgeons, that has nothing to do with ability or suitability for the profession, and this reduces the number of women who ultimately succeed to our detriment. There's some other really interesting examples of unconscious bias. So this is one of my favourite ones. The 5 major orchestras in the United States. If you wanted to be in that orchestra, you basically went and you sat on a stage in front of the very important male maestro and you played your cello or whatever it was that you played, and you auditioned and you got on or not. When they decided that there were not enough women in orchestras, and so they started having auditions where you auditioned behind a screen, and there was a carpet even, so that you couldn't hear your heels clicking as you walked on with your cello and you sat down. Look at the female participation in those orchestras. And it wasn't necessarily bad people. You know, people have bias as to who will work hard enough or be available enough or any of those things. And this study was done by, which economic school was it? I can't remember, but it won an economics school. This is not sort of just done by people who looked at a bit of statistics, and they looked at a whole bunch of reasons why this might have been true in the environment, and thought that about 50% of the increase in women in orchestras over this time was related to the blind auditions. So not everything, but about 50% of it. That's sort of one interesting thing, that how about things, even if we're not bad people, can colour what happens. The other one's this one, which is not about gender, but is about race. This was a study where people got sent out CVs to randomly picked jobs in Boston area newspapers, and they sent out exactly the same CVs, but on 50% of them they had Greg and Emily, and on the other 50% they had Kanisha and Jamal, no, Lakeisha and Jamal, so black names or white names. And they got 50% more callbacks for the white names for exactly the same CV from those randomly picked jobs. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of unconscious bias that exists in all of our own minds, and we've all got it, and we all need to sort of deal with it. I like it that down at Flinders Street Station they tried to stop the unconscious bias by apparently, it's sort of funky, right? So they've decided that they don't want to have only men crossing the road on the walk signs, but they've assumed that a woman wears a dress. So the person in the pants walking across the road was not a woman, apparently, which doesn't really seem to be right, given a lot of this audience. So that's unconscious bias, and that's just something that we need to be aware of, and we need to think about whenever we're in positions of power, like choosing a trainee, or which medical student comes to our operating room, or who we mentor. There's all sorts of biases we have, and we need to think about it. And I think that's something that I need to work on, we all need to work on. Even women have biases about other women, for instance. And then this is about surgical culture. So this was something that you might have all sort of heard about, and I got caught up in this. And it's interesting that Amanda said about all of the, you know, you don't really believe in the bullying stuff, and I must admit, I'm kind of in that camp. But this lady, Gabrielle McMullen, was launching her book. Do you remember this in the media? Launching her book, and she was talking about a particular person who had a sexual harassment case that had you know, put her in particular prominence, and she basically said that that person would have been better to give the guy a blowjob on the night than to bring a sexual harassment case. Now, I'm not going to get into whether I think that was a good or a bad thing to say, other than I think it was a bad thing to say. It wasn't I think the most positive thing, and certainly I would not agree with her, but it certainly started a media storm that got some wheels moving, even though I wish it kind of hadn't. I got caught up in that. You know, I was sort of the face of the Women in Surgery Committee. I was on radio saying that I didn't think bullying was a really big deal, and it wasn't for me. But obviously that possibly wasn't the best message that I should have been given. So what did the college do? Well, to their credit, and I'm not sure exactly how why this got such legs this time. I don't really understand that. They put together this expert advisory group, and these were serious people, you know, equal rights commissioners and health ministers, and you know, really smart, serious people. And they did. So your government ministers, equal opportunity and human rights commissioners, you know, people who knew what they were talking about, former chief commissioner of police. And they commissioned a number of pieces of work from external agencies, looking at prevalence surveys, you know, having open forums, anonymous ability to give anonymous submissions. It was quite a wide-ranging thing. And the report, you can read it on the internet if you want to, but the line from this, I think, that opened it, I think was sort of telling. The expert advisory group has been shocked by what it's heard. So, you know, Kathy Ferguson, very straightforward ENT surgeon from New Zealand, speaking about this almost in tears about some of the things that she heard as part of the expert advisory group. So, you know, as much as it's not been my experience, something that needs to be taken seriously. The time for action has come. The college must be bold and embrace the opportunity to lead lasting positive change, and there is no room for bystanders. So, you know, I've had to sort of say, all right, well, I better get on board with this. I mean, this has been proper research done properly. Might not be my experience, but it clearly is the experience of a lot of people. There's a whole lot of things in there that I don't intend on particularly going through, but 49% of the surgeons and trainees who were surveyed said that they'd been subjected in some way to discrimination, bullying or sexual harassment, DBSA, that's the lingo that it is now. And, you know, interestingly, also hospitals know who the difficult surgeons are, they know who the repeat offenders are, everybody knows, and senior surgeons are reported as the primary source. Obviously, that is going to be the case in this particular survey, and I think if you look more broadly at hospitals, it's not just senior surgeons. You know, there's a big storm about ED at the moment, and that being just as bad as anywhere else. And if you survey nurses, nurses will say that senior nurses are bullies and whatever. So I think it got a big focus in surgery, but I'm not, you know, I think that was obviously very situational. But also this idea that bullying is endemic in surgery. There were lots of things that we have to do, and this was really part of sort of operating with respect. So take a stand, college has to take a stand, set standards, increased external input and scrutiny, and I think that's actually a really good thing that we have people looking in and telling us what we do that's dumb. Surgeons seem to think that we're the only ones who know how to do surgery stuff, but probably there's some other people who have some smart ideas. Foster diversity, and gender equity has never been more on the college's agenda, and that's really good to see. Educate, you know, improve surgical education and improve best practice for complaints. And I think that's really important because we don't deal with complaints in a timely fashion. We don't have senior people who are a step away. You know, who was on the complaints committee? A bunch of surgeons who are mates with the guys who are being complained about. So you need to have a proper complaint process, and that's been important. That's all more versions of the action plan, which I'm not going to go through. But this is just one little thing that happened. So College Council, governing body of college, always, you know, just the odd woman on it, but not really sort of gender imbalance in any way, and they decided that they better sort that out. Sorry, who did I miss? This year. On council?
Yes.
Well, that's because RAC's co-opted. You're not a voted in member.
I didn't vote.
You're not a voter. Let me finish my talk. Quiet for a minute. I'll tell you. She's very difficult. What they did though, they decided they had to fix that. Now these are voted in members, okay? These are not all of the riffraff co-opted by virtue of their position. These are voted in members, and everyone's going, well, you can't have like affirmative action because you can't just put women on college council because they have to be voted in. Well, that's okay. They just went and tapped a whole bunch of women on the shoulder and said, and they're like, oh, very thought about running the council. That might be quite good. Okay, so they ran and they got voted in fair and square, and now 1/3 of council. Affirmative action, but how about just encouraging people that you can do it because you actually have imposter syndrome and you shouldn't. And the ones in red are the women, obviously, but the ones in red with asterisks are the ones voted in at the last election, and so 2 boys but 4 girls, fair vote. So you can have this sort of way of trying to improve gender equity without doing anything unfair for anyone. So, you know, you will have started to see these around the operating theatre. I don't know whether these help or not. They kind of seem sometimes maybe a bit pat to me. But other people have given me the message that they like to see them around. I guess that is interesting, and I'll wait to see. I don't want this to become tokenism for the college. I would rather see real things like 1/3 of people, 1/3 of college council being female, than a bunch of posters and some very, very funky green hats. But if that's, if that's what it takes, and if other people find that useful, then that's great. I'm almost finished. So what are the issues in 2017? I'm still on the bloody committee. I've been chair, now I'm deputy chair, I'm trying to desperately get out of it. It's kind of the same stuff, but it has moved along. Call it culture now, it's about not quality, it's about our patients, that our culture can actually make things worse for people working in our environment, and that's bad for our patients. So I'm very happy to get on board with anything that is an improvement for our patients. If it's just because it's fair or this or that or whatever, I'm not that interested, but if it makes things better for patients, I think that's really important. Flexible training is still a big challenge. How to make real, proper, part-time training that is not poor quality training or second-class training, and yet make sure that we still train really good surgeons. Mentoring and role models is still a really big deal, and that we're trying to work on to provide those role models. So the issues haven't changed that much, but I think we've made a little bit of progress, but we'll keep looking. Anyone have any questions for any of the speakers tonight? Yep.
But to me, this is encouraging that to more traditional recruiting specialties and treatments. They're encouraging movements going to traditional spaces that we recruiting these specialties, but something about this.
I would probably argue the idea that males dominate most fields in medicine. I don't think you find that there's encouraged in any way. I agree with you, we should be aiming for diversity in every group. Surgery encourage diversity, we should certainly encourage diversity in all our fields. I'd be very interested to see a breakdown in different specialties, and obviously the trickle-down effect of women entering medicine later. I'm still most fields have a domination. But anyway, take care of people. Okay. Yep.
I think that's it. And I think, I mean, we deal with patients on what is often the worst day of their life. You know, this is an awful, awful time. We meet them at their very lowest, and we're doing the most invasive thing that's ever been done to them, basically. You know, and we're walking with them and their family through that. And I think that to think that's not like the height of nurturing is, you know.
I guess that's what I was trying to stress. That I don't think I valued things in myself and others when I was going through surgical training. I thought surgical training was about being academically strong, and I still believe those things. You've got to know the knowledge and do the training. But there are other skills that mean a lot to patients. Being kind, taking the time, recognising this is their hardest day, and that those strengths have never really been valued. The word is visible to me as being valuable as a track lead, but now I recognise it's good. It makes a different day. So it's not just all about cutting. But those ways think that when you start, it's all about cutting. Actually, I think the hardest thing is sometimes deciding not to operate. So someone that I can.
Here's the question that you raised though, is there something that it's hard for boys to get into if they want to do it? You know, but there's also the other side of it. Well, should we, even though there might not be any barrier to entry, if there's a gender disparity, should they be promoted and encouraged to improve that gender disparity? It's an interesting question.
Certainly, I think early childcare and education, and there was a big thing when I was in Christchurch. So an early childcare worker was done for molesting a girl, and he was gay, and you know, later on it turned out really that had never happened, and the mother of the daughter was sleeping with a cop, and you know, and this guy went to jail, and you know, he was discriminated against because he was a gay guy who was working in preschool, and you know, and so that's changed things in New Zealand. So you know, you do not hug a young kid who's fallen over in the playground because that could be perceived as inappropriate. So does that mean, certainly I believe that men were not encouraged to go into the fields of, you know, early childhood education, primary school teachers. You know, could we do with more men primary school teachers? Yes, definitely. Should we maybe do things to encourage that? Probably. I think you are right. I think there are things like that where it's probably actually easier for guys to get in there because there aren't so many, but they weren't encouraged because of perceived discrimination against them in that field. Any other questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned that you necessarily
experience it. There was one bastard that I worked with who was horrible. He was an awful person, but it kind of, and I'm just talking about my experience, okay? It didn't feel to me like that was culture. That was just one bastard, and you can meet them anywhere. That's not about surgery, that's about life. And overall, I kind of, it wasn't my experience of it. I mean that the same situation wouldn't have felt different to someone else. I don't know, maybe Stockholm syndrome, I don't know, I just inured to it, who knows, I don't know, but it was not my experience of it. And when sort of people came out and said, this is so prevalent, I was just like, yeah, you know, not what I experienced. There are two surgeons in my training I did not get on with. One of them I think was fairly sexist. He had a daughter who was a medical student at the time. So, I mean, he was the one I found the most difficult. And the other guy was just a prick of a guy. So, and I think he would have been a prick to anyone. So I don't think, I didn't really have any issues at all. But, you know, I understand, as Kate says, that there are stories out there.
So I want to make sure you understand that I believe bullying is a real thing. And I thought that since my first week of medical school. And in fact, I probably thought that before medical school. I was a youth worker before I did med and dealt with this sort of behaviour amongst people in their teenage years. I would say that I experienced bullying as a medical student. I experienced it as an intern. It has been much more sporadic since then. I think that some people are more likely to be targets than others. I think the more senior you get, the less likely you are to be a target. But certainly there were times when I felt very significantly victimised. And what has affirmed my sense that there is a endemic problem, not just in surgery but across medicine, is being the chair of RAPSTA and listening to the stories of people who, I don't know where they get it, but they phone me up, my number becomes available to them somehow, and they call from another state or even from New Zealand and say, I don't know who else to talk to. Here's the thing that's happened to me. This awful thing took place. Now, disproportionately, these people are women, ethnic minorities who have different sexual orientations, different religious backgrounds, so there are intersecting inequalities that make this a reality. But my personal experience and my recent experience representing trainees is that there is a real problem. And I think it's amazing and fantastic that you can get through training without having those experiences. And I know that a good number of people do. And that's awesome. I just want that for everyone.
And I just want to be really clear that although I say I find it extraordinary and it wasn't my experience, I don't disbelieve it. You cannot disbelieve the report of the expert advisory group. So I guess I'm just trying to be honest about how I feel about it, but I do not disbelieve it.
I think for a long time in surgery there's been rather a normalisation of behaviour. You know, so I, as you heard from my talk, I grew up in surgery, and my father's a lovely, kind man, so I'm certainly not a reflection on him, but the idea of expectations and that you should meet expectations of standards that you need to attend. And if you're not achieving those standards, appropriately to be told that you're not achieving those standards. And on a black and white level, I always took it that way, and I never felt guilty. I always felt if someone was telling me I could do something better, fantastic, I want to do it better. But when I stepped out of, particularly again, I really love general surgery. I've been thrilled about it. But when I changed from general surgery to ENT, it made me realise I was functioning in a culture that I didn't realise was hard. I actually really enjoyed every minute of my general surgical training. I didn't realise how exhausting it was until I stepped out and I didn't have that culture that ENT just doesn't have. I've got to be honest, Victoria doesn't have, it does have in New Zealand. But that, I think you normalise if you expect it, and therefore it doesn't seem painful, it doesn't seem difficult, because that's exactly what you're expecting to happen. And you feel like you're moving forward, so that was what was the aim of the exercise. But the reality is, working in a workplace where people actually want to encourage you, like it's belittling, don't do that in a way that's humiliating, it's a really good thing. And we should be all working towards the point where we're faithfully, which is just making a bit of change. So I think the conversation had to happen. Probably experience, I had a wonderful experience, but was I in a culture of bullying? Yeah. I just want to do better. So
just based on experience in medical school and having no idea how my life is going to pan out, how do you think it's best to answer when older male or female doctors keep asking you, oh, but how are you going to have children? What are you going to do?
Tell them to bugger off, it's not their business.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to say to older people. Yeah, it's kind of,
Oh, look, so I think you've got to put the question in context. Okay, I've had innumerable conversations about, and God knows why me, I have no children. Okay, innumerable conversations. How many BST trainees, whatever, come to me about when to have children? Okay, I've spoken to them during training about what they're going to. I've asked them, they've spoken to me, whatever. In context, it's a perfectly good conversation. I just do it when it's going to happen. Make it happen.
That's generally what I say.
But if you've got a person who you trust and whatever, and you think they're encouraging you and trying to help you make life choices, whatever, it's not an inappropriate question. If you think there's just someone who's just trying to bring you down, just stupid answer or tell you to shut up. None of their business. I mean, I had all the questions. My first interview for surgical training to get onto BST. So what does your husband think about you wanting to be a surgeon? Well, you know, so
You should know that if you get asked in an interview to have children, that's illegal.
yeah,
That's illegal.
that's a different situation.
Just so that you're aware. Very public service announcement.
Yeah, have it, put it in context.
That I do know someone who tried to do surgical training and didn't have children because she was trying to have a family, and at the end could not have children and didn't become a surgeon. And so I think that she done cycle IVF, had some embryos on ice, did many years of set training but couldn't get through, and then happened. And to me that is quite sad. So I think that there is a biological clock. My children before I got onto training, and that was pretty unusual at the time. But yeah, I just didn't really think about it too hard. And then it happened, and then, you know, you just managed to get through. And I think it's really exciting to me now that there's lots of registrars, female surgical registrars who are having babies during training. You know, otherwise they might not be able to have babies in their late 30s, 40s. And yeah, it's accepted that they take a year off, 6 months off, whatever they want. You can pretty much take time off. At the moment, everyone's coming back to work full time because there aren't good part-time jobs. I'm probably not an advocate for part-time training, having done it. So you do have to get some childcare and stuff, but it's possible. And there's a registrar from last month about to have a baby next month. So she worked through to about 32 weeks. Got a couple of other registrars who've had babies in the last couple of years. And that's changed, and everyone's a lot more accepting of it now than what they were started my training. So things are changing, and it's definitely doable.
I've had two times where I was scrubbed in theatre with a consultant. That's happened to me twice. No, that wasn't doing this. Nice. So there's number three.
Four.
Oh, it's really cool. You're a surgeon. Any statistics?
No, I can think of a particular person, and I'm sure there was a little handout waving while she was operating. Yeah, it was so close.
Yeah, I guess you don't know it's still now.
The other thing about
Yeah. It's going to be hard if you're a lawyer or
your chief shop
or whatever.
Yeah, milk bar. You're trying to run a milk bar. It's very difficult to have sugar and run a milk bar.
But there's no good time.
Yeah.
It's like
Chinese restaurant. You can't do it.
yeah, both of those women who are scrubbing. That was awesome. The other one we've been deeper in simulation. Both of those women were in their 40s. I thought like this is not true. It's not true. This is not true.
Any more questions about one more? Okay. You